The Philadelphia Campaign, fought between 1777 and 1778, was one of the most significant military operations during the American Revolutionary War. This series of battles, sieges, and skirmishes centered around the city of Philadelphia, then the capital of the American colonies, and played a pivotal role in the trajectory of the Revolution. The outcome of the campaign had far-reaching consequences for both the Continental Army and the British forces, affecting morale, strategy, and the course of the war itself. The strategic importance of Philadelphia. In the early years of the American Revolution, Philadelphia held immense political and symbolic value. As the seat of the Continental Congress, it was the heart of the American revolutionaries' political efforts. Moreover, the city was a thriving hub of commerce and industry, vital for maintaining the economic infrastructure of the colonies. The British understood the importance of capturing Philadelphia, as doing so would not only deal a blow to the rebel government but also provide them with a strategic base of operations in the heart of the rebellious colonies. On the other hand, for George Washington and the Continental Army, defending Philadelphia was a matter of principle and survival. Losing the city would be a severe blow to morale, especially after a series of setbacks. Washington's forces were already stretched thin, and his troops needed a victory to restore confidence in their cause. The British plan, the march to Philadelphia. The Philadelphia campaign began in the spring of 1777, when British General William Howe, commander of British forces in North America, devised a plan to capture Philadelphia. Howe had learned from past engagements that the American army under Washington's command was often elusive and difficult to pin down. Rather than directly confronting Washington's army, Howe decided on a different strategy: a direct march toward Philadelphia, hoping to draw Washington into a decisive battle. Howe's plan was bold. He would launch a major offensive from New York, sailing down the coast to land at the head of Elk, present-day Elkton, Maryland, and then march overland to Philadelphia. This would effectively avoid the challenge of fighting Washington's army in open field, but it also required navigating through the interior of the American colonies, which was filled with hostile forces and difficult terrain. The British forces were confident in their strategy, believing that by capturing Philadelphia, they could strike a severe blow to the American war effort. Howe's army consisted of well-trained British regulars and Hessian mercenaries, totaling around 15,000 soldiers. The march would take them through New Jersey, and the British expected it to be a relatively smooth operation. Washington's response: the battle for control. Washington was well aware of the threat to Philadelphia and immediately took steps to intercept the British advance. He deployed his army to defend critical points, hoping to delay the British march and force them into an engagement on favorable terms. Washington's strategy was not to allow Howe to capture Philadelphia without a fight, but the challenge was daunting. The American forces were inexperienced, poorly equipped, and often plagued by issues of recruitment and morale. The British advance was swift and relentless. Howe's forces defeated Washington's army in a series of skirmishes in New Jersey, including the Battle of Brandywine on September 11, 1777. Despite having the advantage of terrain and position, Washington's army was unable to halt Howe's progress. The battle, although not a decisive victory for the British, gave Howe the opening he needed to push forward and ultimately capture the city. The Siege of Philadelphia. Once Howe's army entered Philadelphia on September 26, 1777, they quickly secured control of the city. The Continental Congress fled to York, Pennsylvania, relocating the government and leaving the British to occupy Philadelphia. Howe hoped that the fall of the city would demoralize the Americans and force them to negotiate peace. However, despite the loss of Philadelphia, Washington's resolve remained strong. He knew that holding the city was a matter of principle, but he also understood that he could not afford to fight Howe's army in the open until he was ready. The Continental Army, weakened but not defeated, retreated to nearby positions and began organizing its defenses. The Battle of Germantown. One of the most significant American efforts to recapture Philadelphia occurred on October 4, 1777, during the Battle of Germantown. Washington launched a daring attack on the British forces stationed in Germantown, a suburb of Philadelphia. The battle was marked by ambitious American tactics, with Washington deploying his forces in multiple columns and hoping to strike decisively. However, the attack was poorly coordinated. Fog, confusion, and a series of tactical missteps led to a disjointed effort that ultimately failed. The British managed to repel the Americans, but the battle was close enough to show that Washington's forces could still pose a serious threat. The failed attack on Germantown, however, further weakened American morale and left Philadelphia firmly in British hands. The turning point: the winter at Valley Forge. While the British celebrated their success in Philadelphia, the occupation of the city proved to be more difficult than they had anticipated. The American forces under Washington had not been defeated, they had simply retreated to defensive positions, and the loss of the city did not mean the loss of the American cause. Washington's army, although demoralized by the defeats in New Jersey and at Germantown, was regrouping and preparing for the next phase of the war. The winter of 1777 to 1778 was a grueling period for the Continental Army. Washington's troops endured extreme hardship at Valley Forge, located about 20 miles from Philadelphia. The army suffered from cold, starvation, and disease. Many soldiers were ill-prepared for the brutal winter, and the situation seemed dire. However, the harsh conditions at Valley Forge became a crucible for the Continental Army. It was during this time that Washington, with the help of skilled foreign officers like Baron von Steuben, began to drill his troops and transform them into a more disciplined and effective fighting force. By the spring of 1778, the Continental Army was better trained and prepared to take on the British once again. Meanwhile, the British found themselves overextended in Philadelphia, and they were struggling to maintain control of the region. The aftermath: a Pyrrhic British victory. Although the British succeeded in capturing Philadelphia, the Philadelphia campaign ultimately proved to be a Pyrrhic victory. The city, though occupied, was of little strategic value for the British in the long term. The occupation drained British resources, and they were unable to achieve a decisive military outcome. On the other hand, Washington's army, though weakened, emerged from the campaign more united and better trained. The campaign also showed that the British could not easily crush the American rebellion. Washington's ability to keep his army intact, despite a string of setbacks, demonstrated that the Continental Army could endure and still pose a threat to the British forces. The resolve of the American forces at Valley Forge and the eventual intervention of France in 1778 were critical factors that shifted the balance of the war.